Hello everyone. Have you ever imagined a world where one tiny creature simply disappears? Not a legendary beast, not a giant predator, but something so small you barely see it until it lands on your skin: the mosquito. Now picture this. You wake up one morning, step outside, and the air feels strangely gentle. There is no soft buzzing near your ear, no irritation on your arm, no tiny shadow drifting past your face. For the first time in your life, the world is completely silent from this one familiar presence. At first, it feels perfect, peaceful, clean, almost too good to be true. But then, as the quiet settles in, something else begins to feel off. It is as if nature itself is holding its breath. That is where today's question begins. Because even though most of us see mosquitoes as nothing more than a source of annoyance, they are also one of the most widely spread and deeply embedded elements of Earth's ecosystems. And the moment we imagine them vanishing, the story becomes far more complicated and far stranger than we expect. A world without mosquitoes sounds like a dream, but every dream has a shadow. Remove one species, even the tiniest, and everything around it ripples. The creatures that fed on them would suddenly face hunger. The waters where their larvae once filtered organic matter would start changing in ways we might not notice at first, then notice all at once. Plants that relied on small, night-active insects might begin to disappear quietly, one by one. It is the kind of silence that does not soothe, it warns. And in that silence, we come face to face with one of the strangest truths of nature. Sometimes the things we dislike the most are the threads holding entire landscapes together. Threads so thin we forget they are there, until we imagine cutting them. So today, let us step into this unsettling calm together and explore a simple but profound question. What would really happen if mosquitoes vanished from the earth? Because the answer is far stranger and far more surprising than it appears. When we imagine the disappearance of mosquitoes, it is easy to focus only on humans, on our comfort, our health, our relief. But nature does not revolve around us, and the first places to feel the impact would be the quiet corners of the world that depend on these tiny insects for survival. In ponds, rivers, wetlands, and even the smallest puddles, mosquito larvae are one of the most abundant food sources available. Countless creatures have built their lives around this single resource. Small fish rely on them for their early growth. Frogs and tadpoles depend on their steady availability. Dragonflies, in both their winged and underwater forms, hunt them constantly. Birds skim across the water to catch them. Bats swoop through the night sky guided by the sound of their fluttering wings. Now imagine all of that food disappearing overnight. Small fish populations would be the first to decline, which sounds like a minor detail. Until you remember that larger fish feed on them. And larger fish feed other animals. That means a shortage in one place becomes a collapse in another. Frogs, already sensitive to environmental changes, would face starvation in certain regions. Arthropods that rely on mosquito larvae would be forced into new territories, crowding ecosystems that were never meant to hold them. And as these animals weaken, the predators that depend on them, herons, owls, egrets, bats, would begin to struggle too. Some species could vanish from entire regions simply because one tiny insect went missing. This is how nature works. Remove one step from a ladder, and the steps above do not just wobble, they fall. We often think of mosquitoes as isolated nuisances. But in reality, they form one of the largest sources of biomass across multiple environments. They do not just exist in the ecosystem, they anchor many of its smallest but most important processes. So if mosquitoes disappeared, the silence we felt in the beginning would not stay gentle. It would spread outward, upward, and into the diets and life cycles of creatures far beyond the buzzing we are familiar with. At first glance, it is hard to imagine that something as small as a mosquito larva could influence the clarity or cleanliness of entire bodies of water. But in nature, balance often depends on the creatures we overlook, especially the ones living beneath the surface. Mosquito larvae play a role most people never hear about. They act as tiny filters. Living in still water ponds, wetlands, rice fields, ditches, and seasonal pools, they feed on organic particles, microorganisms, and floating debris. Every day, millions of them sift through the water, reducing the buildup of excess nutrients that would otherwise accumulate and stagnate. Without them, those quiet waters begin to change. When mosquito larvae vanish, the first shift is subtle. Organic matter starts to linger longer. Sediment settles differently. The water grows murkier. But then microorganisms multiply faster than the environment can control. Algae blooms appear more often. And some of those blooms can become harmful, draining oxygen from the water or producing toxins that affect fish, amphibians, and even plants along the edges. Creatures that once shared the same habitat now find it more difficult to survive. Fish lose the stable conditions they need for spawning. Frogs and salamanders face poor water quality during their most sensitive life stages. Plants depending on clear, oxygen-rich waters begin to fade. What looks like nothing more than dirty water is actually the early sign of a much deeper disruption. And without mosquito larvae to help regulate these small ecosystems, the ripple spreads. Areas that once supported rich biodiversity may shift into low oxygen, low life zones. Wetlands that filtered the environment for thousands of years might start retaining more pollutants. Even the insects that compete for the same food sources could suddenly dominate, creating an imbalance that echoes outward into larger ecological systems. It is a reminder that nature's smallest workers often do the quietest but most essential jobs. And when one of them disappears, the water does not just look different, it behaves differently. When most people think of pollination, they picture the bright flutter of butterflies or the steady hum of bees drifting from flower to flower. But deep in the quieter corners of the plant world, there are blossoms that rely on a very different visitor: the tiny, often unnoticed nighttime insects that include mosquitoes. These flowers do not open during the day. They wait for dusk, unfolding their petals only when the sunlight fades and the world cools. Their fragrance becomes strongest in the late hours, drifting gently across the darkness to attract creatures that move silently through the night. Among these visitors are small flies, moths, and yes, certain species of mosquitoes. With mosquitoes gone, these flowers lose one of their most reliable messengers. At first, nothing dramatic happens. The blossoms still open, the scent still spreads, and the night still carries movement. But slowly, something shifts. Fewer flowers are fertilized. Fewer seeds form. Plants that once spread steadily across forests, wetlands, and riverbanks begin to thin out. Their numbers fall quietly, almost invisibly, because most people never knew mosquitoes were helping them in the first place. And the impact does not end with the flowers themselves. Plants are not just decorations in a landscape. They are anchors. Their roots hold soil in place. Their leaves shelter insects. Their seeds feed animals. Their presence shapes entire micro-environments. So when one plant weakens, the life woven around it feels the strain too. Imagine a forest whose understory begins to change. Not because of storms or drought, but because a tiny nighttime pollinator no longer exists. Imagine a wetland where certain flowers bloom beautifully but fail to produce the next generation. Over years, the shape of the ecosystem begins to shift gently, then noticeably, then permanently. It is one of nature's quiet truths. Sometimes the most unexpected partnerships are the ones holding the world together. And when we remove a small creature like the mosquito, we do not just lose a sound in the night, we lose the invisible bridges that connect life to life. Nature is allergic to emptiness. Whenever a space opens, even the tiniest one, something else inevitably moves in. And if mosquitoes suddenly vanished, the world would not stay quiet for long. The gap they leave behind would be an invitation. Without mosquitoes, every creature that once fed on them would scramble to find something new. But predators do not adapt overnight. And during their struggle, another group quietly steps forward, the competitors. The insects that shared the same habitats, the same water pools, the same food sources, but were once held in check by the sheer number of mosquito larvae. Now, nothing stops them. Small flies, midges, gnats, and countless microscopic aquatic species would explode in population. The algae that mosquito larvae once consumed would be left unchecked, turning calm waters into dense green surfaces. Other insect larvae, some far more aggressive, far more disruptive, could take over these breeding sites. And here's the twist. Not all of these replacement species would be harmless. Some might be stronger competitors. Some might carry their own diseases. Some might disrupt ecosystems even more. And some might become so dominant that they create bigger problems than mosquitoes ever did. Imagine a world where another insect, previously unnoticed, becomes the new overwhelming presence. A world where we remove the familiar irritation of mosquitoes, only to discover that the next generation of insects filling their place is larger, louder, or more damaging to crops, animals, or even infrastructure. This is the strange rhythm of nature. When one thread is pulled out of the tapestry, the pattern does not simply fade, it rewrites itself. And in the absence of mosquitoes, the creatures that rise to fill their ecological niche may not be kinder, quieter, or easier to live with. They might simply be the next mystery waiting for us in the dark. From a human point of view, a world without mosquitoes sounds almost peaceful. No buzzing in the night, no itchy bites, no fear of the illnesses they can carry. It feels like removing a long-standing problem with a single global switch, simple, clean, and wonderfully convenient. But the truth is stranger, because humans are not the center of Earth's balance. We are only one participant in a system far older and far more delicate than our species. If mosquitoes vanished, yes, humans would adapt. We build tools, invent technologies, develop solutions. We could adjust our farms, change our fishing practices, monitor shifting ecosystems, and manage the consequences through science. Humanity is uniquely good at bending the world around its needs. Nature, however, does not have that kind of flexibility. Every ecosystem affected by the loss of mosquitoes would feel the change intensely, and for many environments the shift would not be gentle, it would be sudden. Wetlands would begin transforming within months. Fish that rely on mosquito larvae would decline within seasons. Birds and bats would feel the absence within years. The water quality in thousands of small habitats would change in ways we can't fully predict, affecting everything from insects to amphibians to plant life. And while humans could try to intervene, ecosystems are not machines that can be repaired with a single fix. They are living networks, shaped by millions of years of connection. Once one thread breaks, the unraveling spreads in directions that no simulation can perfectly map. So yes, humans would survive. But nature would enter a long period of instability. Some areas might recover, forming new patterns. Others might become permanently altered. Entire landscapes could shift, quietly rewriting themselves into forms that feel unfamiliar, even eerie. This is the paradox. The creatures we see as the most insignificant or even irritating often play the roles that keep everything else steady. Remove them, and the world does not collapse. It hesitates. It trembles. It searches for a new equilibrium. And in that long search, the planet would feel very different from the world we know. It is tempting to think of evolution as a kind of cosmic gift giver, a quiet force watching our struggles and offering upgrades whenever life becomes inconvenient. If mosquitoes bother us, why not thicker skin? If cold nights trouble us, why not fur? If danger surrounds us, why not armor? But evolution has never worked that way. It does not operate on desire, comfort, or fairness. It operates on survival pressure and only on survival pressure. For humans, thick skin was never a key to survival. Our earliest ancestors lived in environments where heat was relentless. Their ability to cool down determined whether they lived long enough to raise children. Thin, breathable skin helped them run long distances, stay active in hot climates, and release heat faster than any other primate. If their skin had been thicker, heavier, more rigid like that of a rhinoceros, their bodies would have overheated long before they could hunt, gather, travel, or communicate. So evolution chose efficiency over armor. Thick skin also reduces sensitivity, and sensitivity was one of our greatest advantages. Early humans relied on their ability to feel subtle changes: a sudden cold gust, the vibration of approaching footsteps, the shift of insects on their limbs, the prickle of danger. A highly responsive sense of touch helped our ancestors detect threats faster than predators expected. And then there is another truth, one even stranger. Humans survive not by changing their bodies, but by changing their world. When something hurt us, we did not grow stronger skin, we invented shelter. When something chased us, we did not evolve claws, we made tools. When something bit us, we did not adapt physically, we learned to create fire, repellents, clothing, and technology. Our intelligence became our defense, our armor, our thick skin. This is why our bodies remain relatively delicate, because our minds evolved faster than our muscles, and our ability to innovate outpaced any pressure to harden ourselves physically. We did not need to become rhinoceroses, because we could build our own protection instead. If you look at human skin, it seems fragile compared to the armor worn by many animals. It tears, it bruises, it burns. But what appears weak on the surface turns out to be one of the greatest evolutionary advantages our species ever carried, an advantage that shaped everything from how we moved to how we hunted, traveled, and survived. For early humans, the world was unbearably hot. They roamed open savannas, chased prey under the harsh sun, and spent long hours in landscapes where shade was rare. In that environment, thick skin was not protection, it was a trap. It held heat, slowed movement, and forced animals to rest long before they could finish a hunt. Thin skin, however, worked like nature's cooling system. It allowed sweat to evaporate quickly, letting humans run longer than almost any other land animal. Not faster but farther. This endurance made humans unusual hunters, able to track prey until the prey simply could not run anymore. And this single trait helped sustain communities, support families, and spread human ancestors across continents. Thin skin also meant humans could feel the world with extraordinary detail. A shift in air pressure before a storm. The faint vibration of something moving through grass. The touch of a small insect before it bit. Even the temperature of water or soil. That sensitivity helped early humans survive in ways thick skin never could. It helped them build tools with precision. It helped them sense danger before it arrived. And later, it helped them form the subtle, intimate forms of communication, comforting touch, guiding hands, delicate gestures that shaped human culture itself. There is something else too, something more subtle. Thin skin shows emotion. It flushes with fear, glows with warmth, changes with embarrassment, softens with trust. And because humans are deeply social, these visible emotional cues help them understand one another, cooperate, and build groups stronger than any individual. So while thick skin might have protected us from bites and scratches, thin skin protected us from something far more dangerous: isolation. Evolution did not choose the toughest option. It chose the one that let us feel the world, survive its extremes, and understand one another. There is a quiet secret hidden inside human evolution, something that sets us apart from almost every other species on Earth. While animals adapt their bodies to survive, humans adapted something completely different: their minds. And once that happened, our bodies stopped changing in the dramatic ways we see in other creatures. Instead of evolving claws, we shaped stones. Instead of growing thicker skin, we sewed clothing. Instead of waiting thousands of generations for a new trait to appear, we invented solutions in a single lifetime. This shift changed everything. The moment human intelligence became the primary tool for survival, the pressures that normally force physical evolution began to fade. There was no longer a need to grow armor when we could build shelters. No need for sharper teeth when we could craft blades. No need for natural defenses when we could design strategies, communities, and tools that protected us far better than any biological change ever could. And with each invention, fire, spears, baskets, huts, clothing, farming, humans rewrote the rules of survival. We stopped being shaped by nature and started shaping nature around us. Our creativity became our adaptation, our imagination became our shield, and our inventions became extensions of our bodies. Because of this, human evolution took an unusual path. Where other species hardened, we refined. Where others grew stronger, we grew smarter. Where others depended on instinct, we depended on innovation. Even today, this pattern continues. Instead of evolving to handle cold climates, we built heating systems. Instead of developing natural protection from the sun, we created sunscreen. Instead of waiting for new biological traits, we developed medicine, architecture, agriculture, and technology. It is not our skin, muscles, or bones that keep us alive. It is our ability to imagine something that does not exist yet, and then bring it into the world. Humans are the only species whose strongest evolution happens outside the body. Every tool, every invention, every idea is a new layer of armor we have created for ourselves. And that is why our bodies stayed light, delicate, and vulnerable. Because our minds evolved fast enough that we never needed anything else. There is a common idea many of us carry: the thought that evolution somehow fixes problems. That if something is uncomfortable, inconvenient, or unpleasant, nature will eventually adjust our bodies to remove that discomfort. But evolution has no interest in comfort. It answers only one question: does this trait help you survive long enough to create the next generation? Everything else, annoyance, pain, inconvenience, is invisible to it. Mosquito bites may itch, they may irritate, and in some regions they may even carry danger. But across the vast span of human evolution, they were never a threat strong enough to reshape our biology. Most humans survived their bites, lived long lives, and passed their genes forward. So evolution simply had no reason to thicken our skin or remove our sensitivity. What evolution cares about is efficiency. Energy spent growing tougher skin is energy lost elsewhere. Energy spent reinforcing defenses is energy not used for other advantages: agility, cooling, communication, awareness. And for humans, every one of those traits mattered more than a thicker layer of protection. So evolution made a choice, not a conscious one, but a statistical one. It kept us delicate, because delicacy supported our survival better than armor ever could. Our skin stayed thin because thin skin helped us run, adapt, and sense the world. Our bodies stayed flexible because flexibility let us thrive in environments where no natural armor could save us. And here's the strangest part. Many of the discomforts we feel today simply did not exist in the environment that shaped our early ancestors. Our modern frustrations, noise, insects, climate, urban life do not match the pressures of the world evolution responded to. We are living in a time that did not forge our biology. Our bodies belong to an older Earth. That is why evolution feels indifferent to our comfort. Because comfort was never a factor, never a pressure, never a force shaping our survival. We often wish nature worked like a designer, smoothing our lives as we go. But evolution is not a craftsman, it is a long, silent accumulation of advantages, not conveniences. And the body we have today reflects not what would make us comfortable, but what helped our ancestors stay alive. So when we look back at our strange little journey today, something becomes clear. The world is not held together by the grand, the powerful, or the dramatic. It is held together by the tiny threads we almost never see. A creature as small as a mosquito can shape the balance of entire ecosystems. A layer of skin as thin as ours can decide the destiny of a species. And evolution, that old and silent force, follows a logic far removed from comfort or convenience. It moves slowly, patiently, shaping life in ways we rarely understand until we step back and truly look. It is a reminder that the things we complain about, the features we wish were different, the tiny frustrations we think nature should fix, are often pieces of a much larger, older story. A story written long before we arrived and still unfolding around us. And maybe that is the strangest part of all. That the world is not built to please us, but to balance itself, in ways both fragile and mysterious. Thank you for wandering through this question with me. If you enjoyed exploring this quiet corner of the universe where tiny creatures, ancient forces, and hidden truths all intersect, then I hope you will join me again for the next mystery. Until then, stay curious. And I will see you in the next episode of 1001 Strange Questions.